What's up? Welcome to your Self-Helpless snack, where we give you a little taste of the Self-Helpless podcast with a mini episode. If you want to dive deeper into this topic, you can find the full episode linked in this episode's description.
I don't think cancel culture is a real thing. I think that it is a term that we've created to figure out how to make a thing that doesn't feel good also sound like a bad thing. We use it a lot. It's become really popular. And I actually don't think that's what we're talking about. I think that cancel culture is a really sneaky term that has come into the popular consciousness so that folks who have historically held power can name the thing that's happening to them as a bad thing, right? Because when someone's demanding that you be responsible for harms that you have continuously caused, the collective demand for that to happen, we identify as a culture. And then we say, oh, well, what you're asking is for me to be canceled, right? And I think it's way more nuanced than that. I think what's being asked for is for the people who hold power and positionality, and that power and positionality allows them to be incredibly harmful, to not have access to being incredibly harmful, which includes power and positionality. If you have a platform and you use it to be really harmful, you probably shouldn't have that platform until you learn how to navigate your harm. That is a different thing than just like, we're canceling everybody. The problem is we treat everything with a one size fits all kind of approach. And part of that is because we, as a species, as a society, struggle with nuance. And the only understanding that we have currently about accountability comes inside of a punitive system. The only way societally that we talk about accountability is jail, it's prison. And so if the only thing you understand of accountability is punishment, then that's the only way that we know how to be in relationship with one another. Whereas if we understand accountability as actually not an act of punishment, because the reality is there are millions of people in jail who are like, I didn't do it. So they never took account. There was no accountability that happened inside of that dynamic. There was just the assessment that a harm was done and then a punishment rendered. That doesn't require accountability. Accountability demands relationship, and accountability without relationship is just punishment, because two people have to be involved in a thing. You have to say you harmed me, and I have to take responsibility for it. I have to say, yes, I did. Then from there can be a conversation about what does repair look like? What does restoration look like? What does restitution look like? But if I don't ever own that a thing happened, then accountability doesn't exist. But the other piece is that there is a moment now where we're being asked to sort of catch up to ourselves, where technology and access to everyone's opinions, to everyone's historical thoughts, to everyone's former behaviors and present behaviors exists. But also at the same time, there is a system of hypervisibility. Everybody's scrutinized at a really high level. And we haven't evolved to the technology. We haven't evolved to now all my old mistakes are on display and all your old mistakes are on display. What do we do about that? We haven't figured out where we are emotionally, intellectually, and how to handle that. So we're using an old system, the system of punishment and punitiveness, to handle what is a new technological issue, I actually think, and a new ideological issue, an issue that says the historical places where people were allowed to cause harm because they had so much more power, because they had so much more resource, because they had so much more sway in the world, we're no longer accepting that. All of these things are sort of converging at the same time. The truth of the matter is, short of, again, inside of a system where basically we just mean prison, right? We mean, if you did something that was prison worthy, then maybe you got sent to jail, right? Like that's the biggest cancellation that we actually have right now. Every other thing, I have actually not seen anybody who wasn't on their way to jail, but who got canceled for something, not actually be able to come back from that. It's actually not true. You just stepped in a great awakening. What you going to do with it? I could see it as this horrible thing. I could, right? Or I could see it as the opportunity that the universe has given me to interrupt some things that were going to come and get me anyway. And that's what I actually understand inside of what we're calling cancel culture is. You were doing some things that you needed to stop doing regardless. What you going to do now? What are you going to do with this opportunity?
I heard you talking to Amanda Seales about apology versus absolution. Can you
Hmm.
explain what those differences are?
Absolutely. Oftentimes, what people want, right? And this is again why I said it's important that you have to actually sit with yourself. You actually have to sit with yourself and say, what is my real motivation? What's my why in this moment? And oftentimes we're just so busy wanting to not be uncomfortable anymore. I'm in the hot seat and I want to get out of the hot seat and I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to get out of the hot seat. So automatically from that lens, this whatever you're about to do isn't about the person or the harm. It's about you wanting to get out of your feelings. And I think that it's important for us to be able to sit and be like, oh, I'm making this about me. And the whole point was this wasn't about me. This is about someone who got hurt. In this conversation with Amanda, I was talking about an incident that happened with a friend of mine, Dr. Yaba Blay. She had an influx of new white followers on her very Black page, where she posts very Black culture, funny content. And one of her new white followers didn't like one of the videos she posted, commented that she didn't like the video that she posted, and then reported the video. And Yaba's page was taken down and the video was removed. And of course, Yaba was enraged. Like, so you're just allowed to come here and not like something you don't even understand. And now I'm not even allowed to exist. That's how white supremacy works. Yaba's like, I don't know who did it, but, and this woman outs herself. It was me. I'm sorry I was wrong. And Yaba's like, I'm not interested in hearing from you. I don't have anything to say to you, whatever. Then she proceeds to write, because the way that she ended up to the page was from Glennon Doyle and Abby Wambach in a collaborative event they all did together. So then she writes an email. She tags Abby Wambach. She includes Glennon Doyle. She includes Tarana Burke. I mean, she's just like roping in people, like, please forgive me, forgive me. And it became very clear this wasn't actually about restoring a relationship with Yaba one because she never had one. This was about clearing her name in the widest sense that she could. This was, I need absolution, which is I need to be cleared of any sin. I need to be removed of any sin, any wrongdoing. I need to be made pure again in the eyes of the social media public. And I'm going to demand it. I'm going to demand it by demanding all of your attention on me until someone forgives me. That's not an apology. That's not accountability. It's not responsibility. It is merely about the protection of one's own ego under the guise of accountability. And actual apologies are a desire to make right what you made wrong, and sometimes also to understand that that isn't possible, that you cannot fix what you made wrong. You can't do anything. You know, I learned in 12 step, some of the best amends you can ever make is to leave people the hell alone. The biggest gift that you can give to somebody is the biggest sorry you can ever say is, I will stay out of your life. And people need to understand that nuance. So when you find that it's about you and the thing you really want, that's probably absolution. That's not an actual apology.
What is the happy medium with trying your best not to perpetuate further harm and knowing you're gonna fuck up?
So, I mean, I think that's step number one is knowing you're going to mess up. And when you mess up, not just your experience of it, but to really be present to the impact and to understand that people are not going to be nice to you about it because you messed up. A lot of the conversation, certainly cancel culture and calling out and all of these things happen over a multitude of issues. Sort of saw a bit of a like a pinnacle around sexual violence and sexual assault. But we are right now in a moment where a lot of it is around racial justice and those sorts of things. What ends up happening is that there's a desire. Again, the desire isn't about like, I really want to transform whatever it is that is in me that is tied to a legacy of harm. Because that's the piece that I think people have to get is that folks aren't like, oh, you just made this one mistake and now I'm writing you off. People are like, I'm responding to your one mistake that is the same mistake that now I have had to respond to for the last 400 years. It's like if the first person steps on your foot, you're like, okay, no worries, carry on. The second person steps on your foot, you're like, okay. By the time the third person steps on your foot, you're like, if y'all don't get off my god, right? Like you're ready to, that person is about to catch the wrath. And it's because the experience is repetitive, regardless of the individual. And I think that that's a thing that sometimes we forget inside of these dynamics is that people are tired of a repetitive experience. You just happen to be the person du jour rendering that experience. And so The work is, can I be in the discomfort of recognizing that I'm part of a pattern? This isn't even about me, the individual. This is me as a representative of a pattern of behavior over an extended period of time that a significant number of people are over. And so I need to be willing to be uncomfortable as this pattern gets revealed and as I do the work to interrupt my role in this pattern. That's my assignment. And that means that sometimes people are going to tell me that I'm a part of that pattern in ways that do not feel good. They're going to tell me that. And there'll be times when sometimes people tell me that I'm a part of it in ways and they're a little bit more gentle. And I should cherish that when that happens. But I should understand that it's actually not even about me. So, what would it look like, one, for me not to be super personalized about it? And that when it is about me such that it impacts me, right? Such that somebody's like, I'm about to tell everybody to never come to your show again, or whatever the case may be. Can we be present to the why of why that's happening? Because we can get to the why that's happening, then we can settle our nervous system a bit such that we can actually respond from a rational place that wants us to actually change. And the issue, it's like, I don't actually want to change. I just want to feel better. It's the absolution issue again. I don't actually want to be deeply transformed so that I'm no longer a part of a historical pattern that causes harm. I just want to be out of the hot seat today. And as long as that's the underlying energy behind the conversation of like cancel culture and calling out, then what actually that does is that just says, I'm okay if the pattern stays in place. Just leave me alone. And the people who are experiencing the pattern are saying, no. And so until the folks who are part of the pattern are as committed to interrupting it as the people who are tired of being impacted are committed to interrupting it, then what we call cancel culture and call out is going to continue to happen. And so the balance that you're asking for is, how do I, on a daily basis, live into interrupting the pattern of white supremacist delusion inside of myself? How do I interrupt the ways in which I've been indoctrinated into a system of anti-Blackness and anti-people of color and anti-queer people, and like all of the ways in which we've been indoctrinated into believing that there are some bodies that are more valuable than other bodies? How do I interrupt that in myself on a daily basis such that when I get called out, I actually am already on the journey? It don't sting as much if you're already doing the work. And if you're already doing the work, the world sees you. If you're already doing the work, the people in your life already know that. And so it's hard to cancel somebody you already legitimately know is making the effort. So that's the thing I think is the middle point is, am I already doing the work to interrupt this pattern such that when I make a mistake, it is a reflection of the fact that, of course, I'm human and you already know I'm invested.
What are the things that you've noticed that really hold people back from actually listening to each other, understanding each other's perspective, and moving forward? Why is
Mm.
it so divisive?
I think there are a couple of things. And inside of this work of radical self love, that I talk a lot about the fact that none of us, we didn't arrive here like, I'm here to harm people. Just a little baby, but I'm about to ruin lives, right? Like that's not, that's not how we show up, right? All of the ways that we harm are learned behaviors. They are indoctrinations into systems and beliefs and ways of being that we have taken in and then given back out into the world. And so the remembrance that if I had been given a similar set of circumstances, beliefs, ideas, and context, I would probably turn out very similar to whoever the person is that I'm mad at. That's the thing that I think is important to remember. Everybody has a story that made them. Everybody got made, is the way that I talk about that. You got made, I got made. And can we hold that? The other piece is, can I hold the complexity that there are things that cannot be fixed, or certainly cannot be fixed in the immediate? And there are things that cannot be fixed in the ways that we understand fixing. But that's also because we have such a limited version of what does it mean to fix a thing. It means that nobody's mad at you anymore. It means that everybody's back together. Those are not real life paradigms. Those are not the truth of human nature and the complexity of human emotion. And so, what does it mean to be like, I came as far as I can come? I've done the best that I can. And that may never be good enough. And can I hold that that person has the right to feel like it's never good enough? If I can say, I've given all that I can, I've given the best that I can, I'm willing to keep showing up as best as possible to this conversation. And it will always be imperfect, and I may never be forgiven. This person may never forgive me. And they have that right. They are not bad or wrong because they decided to never forgive me. They have that right. And if that person can say, I've been in this process as much as I can, and I'm not going to ever forgive them. And that doesn't mean they didn't try. I just know that I'm not. Okay. Can we be in the tension that lives in that place? There's no resolution there. It's like hearing a discordant note and you're waiting for the note to resolve and nobody plays the next note and you're like, ah! But we have got to learn how to be in that, how to sit in that discomfort. And I think if we can sit in that discomfort, we will find that time, that our own healing softens those places that feel so hard and discordant. But we have to stop waiting for everything to be tied. We've watched too many movies that tie everything in a neat, tiny bow, and we think that that's what life is, and it's not. And can we be in the discomfort of that with ourselves and with one another?
Yes. We have a hard time admitting when we're wrong. And so, where do you think that comes from? Why can't we all just say, look, it's okay to be wrong? It's what we do going forward. Why are we all so freaked out and scared admitting that?
Because we've turned being wrong into being bad people. If I messed up, I'm a bad person. And if I'm a bad person, then that means I won't belong. And the human desire is to belong. Human desire is connection. Some of this is just evolutionary. If you messed up in the clan and they kicked you out, that was a bear, you were a bear's dinner. It was a mortal mistake. There is still an evolutionary fear in us of being excluded and the danger that exclusion happens. But there's also an emotional fear in exclusion and the aloneness and isolation that experiences in that. And so if we have made I make mistakes means I'm a bad person, then the only way to rectify that is to never make mistakes, which we know is not possible, or to deny that you ever make mistakes. Those are the only two options, right? Those are the choices we're left with. And so what ends up happening is we become unwilling to look at the places where we're wrong because we believe that the stakes are so high. The work is to recognize that my mistakes don't make me a bad person. They make me a human. Can I invite in my own humanity? Because the more, this is radical self-love work, the more I invite in my own humanity, the greater my capacity to hold the humanity of others. When we are super exclusionary, super banishing, super mean at the first infraction to other people, it's usually just a reflection of how we are in relationship with ourselves. If I can change the nature of that relationship with myself, if I can not exclude myself, not abandon myself, not belong to my own self, then it becomes so much easier to hold all of the complexities of other beings.
Thank you for tuning in to Self-Helpless. You can find our brand new merch, Patreon community, and other fun goodies at selfhelplesspodcast.com. We'd be thrilled if you left an Apple Podcast review, shared this episode with a friend, or post about it on Instagram and tag us at Self-Helpless Podcast so we could repost you and say hi. As an independently produced show, we sincerely appreciate your support. Thanks, everybody.